And I would like to introduce our next speaker now. And we're going to be, having gone from Cornwall to Amsterdam, we're now going across to Cambridge. And we're going to be hearing from Clara Todd, who is a member of the Cambridge Doughnut Economics Action Group, which draws membership from many different communities in Cambridge and collaborative experience from COVID-era mutual aid groups. So CAMDIAG is the acronym, and it works with existing environmental and social equity groups to spread the message of hope of a future of Cambridge within the Doughnut. And Clara Todd is fascinated with joyful and heretical economic ideas, such as the gift economies and alternative currencies. And she's been involved for half a decade with the UK's longest running local exchange trading scheme, CAMLETS. So tell us how you're going to turn Cambridge into a Doughnut city, Clara. You're on mute.
Okay, can you hear me now? Fantastic. Well, I'm going to do my best to follow some amazing speakers. So hopefully that's my slide on your screen. Okay, so yeah, this presentation is going to be more from a personal point of view, because this reflects more where we are with the project and how it's coming together. It's coming from the community and not from the council, and it reflects the moment that we're in and how we got here. So a few words about me. I was a goth as a teenager, but I think I smiled way too much. Even in the midst of the doom and gloom of my adolescence, I smiled way too much. I help make web applications as a living. I'm a user experience designer and web developer. I like working with complex systems. I generally love technology and help others use it. I'm a mum of 2 boys. As philosopher Roman Kuznarik says, I want to be a good ancestor. I've started thinking longer term, generations, about all the generations to come. I'm not an economist. I like to think I'm a citizens economist. I've got no formal training. Many folks took up knitting or baking sourdough bread during lockdown. I'm binged on the writing of Karl Marx, Naomi Klein, Donella Williams, and of course, Kate Raworth. Much on audiobook during sleepless nights. I can't promise I've retained everything. About Cambridge Doughnut. The group was started by a few folks reading Kate Raworth's book in the University of the Third Age. And I don't think you can read a book like that without thinking, well, what are we going to do about it? The group has pulled membership and support from a few different sources in Cambridge and has rapidly been growing since the summer. In this presentation, I'll talk about Cambridge, the group's guiding principles, and where we think we are going. So Cambridge, it's a lovely place to live. The river and the buildings of Cambridge colleges dominate the centre of town. They're mostly very beautiful. You can get around by bicycle very easily. But why is that in 2017, 47 deaths in Cambridge, or 5.6% of all deaths, could be attributed to particulate air pollution, most likely caused by emissions from diesel engines in stationary traffic in and around the city? It's a lovely place to live for some. Cambridgeshire has one of the fastest growing economies and populations in Britain, with 22% increase in population predicted between 2010 and 2031. There's been a building boom, with many greenfield sites built over to provide housing and workspaces for the new industries. So why is it that some people have struggled to feed themselves over the last 6 months? Some traveling miles across town to queue up at one of the many food hubs for well over an hour at a time. Why is it that many people who grew up in Cambridge can't afford to live here as adults? It's prosperous for some. And then, of course, despite our great prosperity and success as a local economy, there are some things that we can't easily buy our way out of, no matter how prosperous we are. Too little water, the growing demand to support Cambridge's incredible growth is putting pressure on the chalk streams and the aquifer. Among many terrible effects, it impacts biodiversity in our area. Too much water. Land and property in and around Cambridge will be underwater or flooding more regularly in just a few decades with rising sea levels and the changing climate. Plenty of people know just how fragile things are socially and environmentally. We just need to find each other and turn from despair to transformative action, have a project to crystallize our efforts around. Without yet using the language of donut economics, there are many regenerative projects in Cambridge focused on moving the city into the sweet spot of a safe and just place for humanity. We've all come to see the donut model provides greater visibility of the many initiatives within this complex system. Cambridge is very ready for the Cambridge Doughnut. There are folks in the district council and many decision makers who talk about donut principles, having read Kate Rayworth's book. We are very grateful for the support and guidance thus far from sympathetic councillors. We are leveraging the efforts of many really good community groups, and I hope to find common ground to amplify and support each other. So the team. So as I say, we've been growing a lot recently. At the beginning of summer, there was a handful of individuals to well over 40 members right now. Some incredibly strong, dedicated people who are really moving things forward. So we're the team that is building the portrait, the tools, making the connections, liaising between all the different actors that are involved in regenerative action and also the decision makers. We are doctors, artists, academics, entrepreneurs, teachers, and engineers. Some have never been involved in community action, and some are seasoned activists. We are young people, parents, and grandparents. The mix of ages and perspectives make us a really strong group, and I'm hopeful for what we can do. There are challenges, sure. Collective group decisions are hard. We're plugging and connecting with communities directly where we can and going by way of other organizations when we can't. So, how things are taking shape. Well, we're facing a crisis, climate change and snowballing inequality. Mutual aid groups spring into existence as they often do in the face of crises to fill in gaps. COVID-19 pandemic is a crisis. Many of us have experienced the creative power of mutual aid groups from the inside, and that's where the energy and the fire comes from. We're digital. Everyone works online now. Online tools allow us to collaborate, communicate, and move fast. Some tools are new for many people in our group, but we put in the time to support, help, and ensure everyone has access. As we strive for equity for all people in Cambridge, it's natural we strive for it within the group. Emergent. Our group is non-hierarchical and everyone is free to create working groups around an issue that interests them. Many of our members have other associations and connections. More co-creation will emerge. Art. As we come out of lockdown and restrictions are loosened, we are preparing to engage with community in physical space. We're planning some exciting collaborations with the artists working in the community, ready to roll with pop-up conversation stands in the city, our donut stops. We are learning how to communicate about this stuff and feel art will be central. So, some of the assets that we hope to create, One of them we've been calling the digital donut. And as we learn from residents, groups, and local authorities through different data streams, conversations, and workshops, we'll construct the Cambridge Doughnut, the city portrait, which is online. It will be an attractive and accessible interactive tool for local individuals and organizations to learn how the city is performing on each of the social and ecological dimensions. Stories, official targets, resident-defined targets, initiatives, as well as cold hard metrics will be embedded in it. We imagine that it will change a lot over time. We love to co-create the digital donut with other city groups, as the tool will be open. It will be open source, transferable, and useful elsewhere. So what kind of support can we get? Well, the local government, the district and the county councils are giving us support. We know that we have friends there. District Councillor Katie Thornborough uses UN sustainability goals to set her priorities for planning. The principles of donut economics was accepted by the executive committee this year, and they may take it into the local plan in 2024. But as we know, accepting in principle is not the same as accepting the principles and respecting the boundaries, planetary and social. It's all about COVID right now and Brexit. I said it, I said the B word, and the multiple economic shocks that we know is coming. Because almost a decade of austerity cuts, contingency planning for most local councils can cope with perhaps one shock at a time, not two or more. All the money for contingency planning for many councils have been swallowed up by COVID. So both the councils worked with mutual aid and other community groups to provide resilience during the COVID crisis. District and county councils relied and supported us, our mutual aid groups. There was willingness to trust and empower groups, provide some no strings funding, safeguarding training, and helping clear some blockers. Recognition of the value of the commons and collaboration with the communities. But there is a powerful property lobby, property development and business lobby in Cambridge. The councils will be pressured to get back on track with growth when the market can support it. The councils and committees involved do hard to balance growth with the needs of the community and the environment. Councillors want to do the right thing, but are worried about market stagnation or even degrowth. So we're coming from the grassroots. We've got some really tough times ahead here in Cambridge and in the rest of the UK. The Doughnut model is a really good tool. It makes visible the efforts of all the many players that make up our economy. We are excited about the possibilities. Everyone can be given the tools to understand their part of the portrait and what they can do to make Cambridge a place where everyone thrives and respects planetary and ultimately existential boundaries. It is times like this that brave and radical thinking is needed. Perhaps instead of saying we can't afford this transformation to a donut economy, we say we can't afford not to. In different parts of Cambridge, people have different experiences and different challenges. It was an amazing feat to scale the Doughnut from the world to the nation to the city. And can we drill down further? The 10 most deprived areas of Cambridge are in the north and northeast of the city, and some of the UK's 10% most deprived. Perhaps the city portrait is not granular enough. Let's go smaller. We want to know what's going on lower down within wards and inside communities. So we want to build the tools that will empower the communities to be able to build their own portraits, to understand and to change
Got 5 minutes, Clara. Oh,
Oh, I'm done.
done. Wow.
Thank
Thank you
you.
so much. Brilliant on the timing. Excellent. Have we got, Tom, have we got that many questions in the Q&A for Clara? Because if not, I'm going to jump in with one.
I can't see that have been added specifically for Clara.
No.
Except to what extent are faith groups involved?
Faith
that's
group.
an interesting one.
Yeah, so I can't say about Doughnut Economics, our group, the action group. I can say that they were very involved in mutual aid, where it's coming from, because faith groups were really key to setting up the food hubs that were opening all over Cambridge. And it's sort of a collaborative approach, kind of going back to all of the different players in the community to help us all kind of get through this and transform. Faith groups are very important too.
And there has been a question, which I'm just trying to find now, but it was about rural. Here we are. I mean, it was a question that was asked earlier. What about rural locations? Environment can be seen as being destroyed to maintain cities. There needs to be a dialogue of sorts. How can this be achieved by the concept of the donut? I was thinking a little bit about that when you were talking about Cambridge. You mentioned the involvement of a district councillor, but does the Cambridge donut kind of look beyond Cambridge, the city, further afield? And obviously it's a very rural county, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Farming is very key for East Anglia, where we are. There are lots of people that travel into Cambridge for work and have links with Cambridge for work, because it's quite an expensive place to live. That there are lots of people that travel in. As a group, we understand that we're not in an island. If you fix an issue in one place, it's this whole sort of systemic, complicated system that you push in one place and there are implications and change in another. So if we decided to all kind of make Cambridge car free, for instance, well, where do you put the cars, and what effects are there on the outside, on the arteries around the outside? So we need a holistic approach, and it involves all of those communities outside of Cambridge connecting inwards. I think Cambridge City Council is politically, it's quite an interesting place to live, because I think most of Cambridge is quite conservative, and then our little bit in the middle, there's a lot of green thinking, a lot of environmental thinking, but it's mainly Labour and Lib Dem as the power. So there's usually a little bit of an interesting push and pull between interests.
And talking about councils, well, actually, we've got some questions now, so I'll save my question. Penny has asked, could you elaborate on the software you're using to map the donuts in Cambridge, and how is this going to be used?
We don't know that yet. We're building it. So if you're interested, I've done some initial planning with a few other people. We've got some ideas of how it will work and how it's going to be sliced. It's very early days yet. It doesn't exist, but we're looking for ways to collaborate with other cities and places that would feel that this would be useful to them.
And Michael has said your point about the concern of economic stagnation and degrowth was a good one. And how are you tackling this? Tackling, I think that means tackling this. I mean, it's a huge issue.
Absolutely. But as we know, there's more to a functioning and healthy economy than just GDP growth. So Kate Rayworth and economists and systems thinkers help us see that we need to expand the definition a little bit. So if instead of degrowth, it was thriving, you know, the people in that community was thriving and it was sustainable. Degrowth is usually in terms of GDP and this endless expansion. But you know, as we know that we can't always keep expanding and expanding, because then without any limits, it will just engulf everything and catastrophic crises. So yeah, degrowth, well, it just needs reframing, I think. We want a place for everyone to thrive for a long time.
I think that's a really good point about the reframing. I'm sure we might discuss that a bit further later on. A couple of questions have been asked about property. There's a specific point about a development in Cambridge called Marmalade Lane, build a sustainable, but it looks like bricks and mortar and has car parking. And someone else has commented, Dylan has mentioned after that, you're right to mention the property issue. Any thoughts on how you can stop property and land development driving us in the wrong direction?
I think the councils have a massive challenge to balance the growth and the demands of increasing population here with the environment. And we really do have an issue with water. It's going to be increasingly apparent for people. Yeah, I don't envy them at all. There does have to be a balancing act, and we appreciate that. They are doing a lot of work with developing brownfield sites and not swallowing up more greenfield, but it's yeah, there's still a demand. A lot of the property that was built around Cambridge, instead of actually addressing the needs of the people that lived here, were very much buy to let. There's a lot of investment in property going on. So again, there needs to be a reframing of what the property is for. What is it addressing? Why, you know, who's to live there? Who's going to benefit? I don't know how it's really going to balance. It's a beautiful dance. We're going to have to find out.
And Lizzie Goddard says that she finds your talk so inspiring. She says, I'm a teacher and look to try and teach sustainable systems in my subject. Is the digital app that you spoke about, is that available to other community parties in different towns and cities? Is that the one you said that you're still developing?
It will be, but not yet.
There's a lot of interest in it, so make sure you leave your details.
Yeah, if you're a teacher, there's some really great, if you're people on participants here, I hope you already know that there's some really great resources for learning about donut economics and really good resources for teachers. Everybody is encouraged to add materials to it, so it's a growing library that should be useful for people. So you go to doughnuteconomics.org and join the community, Lizzie, and you know, add your materials and benefit from other people's.
I think that's a great point to do the plug for. I was going to mention it at the end, but thank you for mentioning it now. So yeah, excellent, Clara. And I joined it, and tremendous tools, all sorts of tools, videos, resources. You know, there's a whole community there where you can share. So, you know, groups like Cambridge, which, you know, very much grassroots. It's been great also the comparison between a grassroots initiative with the Cornwall initiative, where you've got the council leading on this. So you mentioned, just to go back to councillors, that, you know, there has been some interest, but clearly this really needs to get taken up by the council for it to be sort of, you know, applied at across at every level. have you got, you know, are you just chipping away at this? Do you have sort of a strategy for how to crack that particular one?
Well, we just keep talking. Hopefully, what we're hoping for, our strategy, is to make sure that there is a demand and a need and a readiness within the small to medium enterprises, any local initiatives, any groups that we're kind of, it's less of the council deciding, oh, we really should think long term and we should do something about it. There's some great work going on anyway. I'm not putting that down, but it's more, oh, this is what we're doing. So that the context, it's building the foundation for them to do the work and make it a lot easier for them to do the work that they must do.
Yeah, and I think seeing examples like the examples we've seen today all helps to do that, doesn't it? So, you know, everybody who's in on this webinar today, if you're interested, do join the Doughnut Economics Action Lab and get talking and to each other and with your councils. We've got a couple more minutes, I think, Clara. So, Tom, did you have any questions that you would like to add?
There is another question for Clara,
Okay.
which says, I
Read it.
really like Clara's idea about art shaping the uptake of the Doughnut. Could you elaborate on how this is or could be happening?
Well, again, because we're sort of early days, we have got involved. We have some really exciting, really talented artists involved that we're talking to, planning some work in schools. And they're already doing work with trees and issues around sustainability in the school. So it's a really good and exciting partnership. We've got a lot of ideas. We're sort of talking to storytellers and all kinds of things, just, you know, full spectrum art. Obviously, when you're trying to change minds, having something that's full spectrum, you don't want to concentrate on the words and all of this intellectual stuff, the academic stuff that takes a lot of time to deconstruct and understand. But if you work, Kate Rayworth's point was that if you work from really strong visual vocabulary, you know, really and make it really attractive and you make it really fun, then you have more of an idea to get your message across. So there's visual storytelling, music, there's all kinds of things going on. It could be really exciting.
Yeah, and we saw how many groups you've already got involved. So it's really broad, isn't it? I love that sort of grassroots approach, and that you're right, Kate Railworth does very much talk about pictures and images to inspire. So thank you, Clara. Tom, have I missed any other questions? It's not always easy to catch them all, is it? But I think that's all the questions.
I think that's all the questions that were for Clara, yeah.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Oh, is the
Well,
Folk
thank
Festival
you
at Cambridge on board? Somebody has just posted.
We haven't talked to them yet, but that's run by the council. It's Cambridge Live, but yeah, good thing. Any tips you can give me for interesting people to involve, please keep them coming.
Big festival, yes. I think that would be a good one to target. You'd have a massive audience.